What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Action Network podcast. This is one of our most popular podcast episodes of the year, the Action Network's fourth annual Super Bowl propapalooza. I am your host, Chris Raybon, and I am joined by my guy, Sean Koerner. And for anyone that doesn't know Sean, he's the co-host with me over at the Fantasy Flex podcast. He's Action Network's director of predictive analytics. And he's been Fantasy Pros #1 ranked NFL expert 3 times, one of the sharpest NFL player projectionists in the industry. So, Sean, glad for you to join me on this other channel.
Absolutely. And, the Propapalooza episode is always my favorite. I mean, we have 2 weeks to analyze one game, and this is the only game all season where we get punter props. So, just my favorite time of year. Can't wait to dive in on this.
So for everyone out there listening, we will do our normal 6-pack with our favorite props. And then we're going to do a massive best of the rest where we just talk about all different kind of props. We can talk about coin tosses. We can talk about yardage props, attempts, special teams. Sean mentioned the punters. We'll talk National Anthem, first half, second half, MVP, first touchdown, all that good stuff here on the Action Network Propapalooza Super Bowl podcast. So let's get right into it, Sean. Let's start with our Super Bowl Propapalooza 6-pack. Sean, where are you going with your first selection?
So for my first pick for the Super Bowl Propapalooza, I am going with Cooper Kupp, longest reception over 28.5 yards. And I was a bit surprised I was able to find value on a Cooper Kupp over. You figure books are anticipating and getting most of the handle on Cooper Kupp's overs. However, there is, quite a bit of value on this prop specifically to the over. And I simulate the Super Bowl 10,000 times and I pull my projections from that. And heading into this, I'm actually projecting Cooper Kupp a little bit less in the market in terms of reception. So I'm projecting him for 8.0 receptions, where the market looks like it's around 8.3, 8.4. So I just want to be out front, like I'm projecting him a little bit lower, and I'm still getting his median closer to 33.5 here, which is a pretty big edge in a market like this. So I'm projecting this to hit, around 63% of the time at this number. And when it comes to Cooper Kupp specifically, you don't really think of him as a deep threat necessarily. His ADOT's lower, around the 8.4 range, but he's phenomenal after catch, 6.4 yards after the catch on average. So he can rack up yards after the catch. Plus, he's going to see a ton of volume. So he'll likely have around 8 chances to clear this number. So that's why there's a ton of value on this over. And on the season, in 20 games, he's cleared this in 15 of them. So that's a 75% hit rate. And, his median's 36 on the air. So my math sort of checks out here. Love the value we're getting here. And I'd probably bet this up to 30.5.
Yeah, that's great value. I can't believe he's hit that in 15 out of 20 and they're posting it so low. I mean, this guy's he's going to be open like every play. There's nothing Cincinnati's really going to be able to do. I don't think, even dropping 8 in the coverage, which is what they did against Kansas City. Stafford, if he's going to still let it rip down the field to Kupp. And if there were 8 men in coverage, the most likely person to get open down the field would still be Cooper Kupp. So I do like that one. For my first pick in the second overall of the Super Bowl Propapalooza 6-pack, I am going with the winner of the coin toss to defer to the second half at -500. I don't know what your Cooper Kupp edge was, but this is a crazy edge because the odds imply about an 83% chance of the winner of the coin toss deferring. Well, I went back and looked at Cincinnati and the Rams. Cincinnati won the toss 11 times, deferred all 11. The Rams won 10 times, deferred all 10 times. And their opponents all deferred every time, except once. The New York Jets took the opening kickoff against Cincinnati. Out of 40 possible chances, 39 ended with deferring for these two teams. The odds imply only 83% chance. I think this is closer to a 99.9 or 99.5 at least percent chance here. So I would hit this while you can. And I know a lot of people listening to the show. I know you're gonna parlay. I know that's what you're gonna do with these props. So this is a great parlay bet here to kind of start you off here. Pretty much a sure thing at minus 500 when I think the odds should be to any juice, to put it that way. You should bet this up to any juice. So that is my favorite Super Bowl prop this far. I can't believe they posted it at minus 500.
Yeah, I love these props where you're so confident. It doesn't matter what the juice is. So this is essentially like, would you bet that the sun's going to rise tomorrow at minus 500? Of course you would. So I'm convinced. I don't mind laying down on, props like this where it's a surefire hit. So I think I'm gonna join you on this one.
Oh yeah, this is a max bet. It's just like if you plan to put this in a parlay, and that is going to depend on which other bets are allowed and things like that. But just make sure you don't use up all your max bet if you're going to do it that way. But like either way, I mean, it's worth getting a couple of dollars out of it. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, kind of mix it in with parlays. Good way to kind of like bump that up. So yeah, like definitely use this to your advantage.
All right, we're going with your second and the third overall pick.
So for my second pick for the Super Bowl Propapalooza 6-pack is a punter prop. And it's Kevin Huber. He's the punter for the Bengals, for his longest punt to be over 52.5 yards. So again, I crunched the numbers on this. I ran my simulations, and I'm giving a median closer to 55.5 on this. So again, there's quite a bit of value here. I have him clearing this 62% of the time. And looking at his game log this season, the math checks out. He's cleared this number in 13 of 20 games. That's a 65% hit rate. And yeah, his median is closer to 54.5. And I think that the fact that this game's being played in SoFi, we have sort of a domed environment. I don't think there's anything fishy going on here. So I love taking Huber over 52.5 for his longest punt for the Super Bowl.
This is exactly why we have you on the show. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even make any punter projections, or at least not yet. You might have inspired me, but no, this is great. And I know you've hit like a punter prop every single Super Bowl. It's like all you talk about.
There's usually one that like there's a pretty big edge. Last year, I even forgot the punter's name. The punter for the Buccaneers, I think I had the under.
Pinion,
yeah, and he didn't even come close. So these are fun. This one, I think this one is going to be pretty close. I think he ends with like a 55 or 56 yard punt. So every yard in this market matters. That's why I want to be clear. I'd probably bet this up to 53.5. I wouldn't go past that. But anything in the 52 to 53.5 range, there's just too much value on the over.
You know what else is interesting about this one? And, I know this is a prop episode, so we won't go into our high level discussion of the game. Stuck and I will be back next week to do that at the normal time. But I will say this, the Bengals have lost by more than 3 twice all year in Joe Burrow's starts. And they're 4.5 point underdogs. So you may also get more punts than you usually would, which obviously just means more opportunities for Huber. For my second pick in the 4th overall of the Super Bowl Propapalooza 6-pack, I am going with Samaje Perine under 15.5 rushing and receiving yards. And I love this because you get to take advantage of recency bias here. So Perine not only scored the Bengals' first touchdown in the AFC Championship game and gave them a pretty big jolt, but it was a 41-yard screen pass that looked like it was going to go for a few yards, but not many. And then he just broke it loose. And now we're getting 15.5, where the last 5 games, he was under that number in all 5. His snap rate has actually been ticking down. So I have his mean projected at 13 total yards, which means his median is going to be a little lower. But let's do the math on this. Perine averages about 4 yards per carry for his career and 7 yards per catch, right? Mm-hmm. So that means no matter how you slice it, he's going to need 3 touches to get over this, whether it's, 2 catches and a carry, 2 carries and a catch, whatever. If he gets just 3 carries, then he would still be short. So he needs at least 3, maybe even 4 to go over this. Well, he's had 2 or less touch opportunities. So that includes incomplete targets in 2 of the 3 postseason games. The only game where he had, 3 or more touches was that last game against the Chiefs. He's only had more than 1 touch once in that last game against the Chiefs in the postseason. And yes, he got the touchdown, but he also ran a bad route in that game as well, where they would have had a good play set up and he ran like the wrong way and Burrow kind of like chewed him out. So this is the Super Bowl. I think you see Joe Mixon on the field as much as possible. And Chris Evans has actually had just as many carries as Perine in the postseason. And Evans has been explosive on kickoff returns. So it's no guarantee that Perine gets even one carry. And after last week, I know he got the touchdown, but that's like a very designed play. I think they kind of used up the design Perine long screen passes in the AFC Championship game. So I'm going to bet under 15.5 for Perine here, which is essentially I'm betting he gets under 3 touches.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. And, there's a chance he just doesn't see a rush attempt.
Yeah.
The past 2 games, he has 0 rush attempts. Chris Evans actually has 1 more carry than him in the playoffs with 2. So this is essentially his receiving yard prop. And the market for him is right around 1.5 catches, which is in line with my projection. So, I mean, I have the median for this closer to like 8.5. And when you're dealing with yardages this low, getting 7 yards of value is massive. And he hasn't cleared 15.5 total yards since week 15. So it's hard
to from last week. Them. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Aside from last week. So it's really hard to, yeah, exactly. Recency bias. You got that 1 long touchdown. It's really hard to see them sort of game planning to get Samaje Perine touches. So yeah, I'm with you on this one. This one has to be over a 60% chance of hitting on the under.
All right. We're going with your third pick.
So for my third pick for the Super Bowl Propapalooza 6-pack, I am going with the Rams calling the first timeout in this game. And, typically I ignore these props. I don't think I've ever bet on the coin toss. I never bet on, which coach will throw the first challenge flag, which coach will call the first timeout. But I think there is some sneaky edge on the Rams calling the first timeout here because if you look at some research, Michael Lopez did an in-depth piece on how coaches use their timeouts. And Sean McVay, by far, led all coaches with 2.9 unnecessary timeouts per game, which is a crazy stat. And if you watch Rams games, like you can see it in action. Like he does call a ton of timeouts where he doesn't like the formation or, he loses a challenge. There's all these different reasons why Sean McVay just blows through timeouts. So, usually the first timeout in a game, will in theory be an unnecessary timeout. So I wanted to just test it out. So I was going to look at the past couple games, like were the Rams the first team to call timeout? Each of the past 9 games, the Rams have called the first timeout. So that was enough proof for me to just go along with this theory that Sean McVay just blows through timeouts. So in a market like this, where typically I'm just ignore it, I think there's too big of an edge here to just ignore and pass up. So I'm locking in the Rams to call the first timeout at -115. I would probably set this at -150. So, I'd be willing to bet this up to -130. That's how confident I am. But I never thought in a million years I'd be recommending a punter prop and a first timeout prop on a Super Bowl Propapalooza.
Really? I think you were -2,000 to recommend a punter prop. But
that is true.
The timeout, that's a little more. Those are usually one of those things that, on a normal type of game, we'd be stay away from this. The odds are probably even. But I agree with Sean McVay. And the funny thing is, he's not even a guy who, a coach who has an inordinate amount of challenges. So if Taylor actually has more challenges than McVay over the last 3 years. So, and I think 6 more. So it's a substantial amount. So if McVay challenged more, he'd probably burn even more timeouts because he'd probably lose a good amount. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. The last 9 games. So that is an amazing stat. All right. For my third and final and the 6th overall pick of the Super Bowl Propapalooza 6-pack, I'm going with Matt Gay over 1.5 field goals. And now we have a punter prop, a timeout prop. Why not get a kicker prop in here? So the Bengals, you look at them, they're not a team that gives up a ton of multi-field goal games. It's happened about 40% of the time this year. But look at Matt Gay, and he's gotten at least 2 field goals in 15 of 20 games. So even if you take those two, 75% for Gay, 40% for the Bengals, and you average that together, that's about 57.5%, which is about the true odds are about minus 135. And you're getting this in the so I'm showing about 10 points of juice value here on Gay here to go over multiple field goals. And I think also when you kind of do these projections, you would look at the kicker more than the defense. So the true odds are probably over 60% when you really calculate it. So yeah, probably closer to 150. So you can get this for 120 minus 125. And I would put the true odds closer to minus 150, about a 60% chance, if not more. Again, he's done it in 75% of his games, and the Rams are favored, so that also gives them a more positive game script to where they'd be tacking onto their lead. So really like this prop, kind of in that similar boat to Kupp, where it's like, he's gone over this number in 75% of the games, and we're getting pretty good juice on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to these field goal props, I would like to take the over for like an accurate kicker. And Matt Gay happens to be one of the most accurate kickers in my model. I'm projecting around an 88% field goal rate, because if you look at his profile this year, he's made 94% of field goals. And that's with attempting 5 field goals of 50 yards or more. So he's an extremely accurate kicker. This game's going to be a home game for him. It's indoors, essentially. So yeah, I think if he gets 2 or more field goal attempts, he'll probably make both. So this is a rare kicking prop where I'd probably take the over as well.
Yeah. And interesting that you mentioned it's indoors in LA. In LA this season, he's made multiple field goals in 9 of 10 games in LA. So not because it's home field advantage, but it is indoors. 4 of his 5 games where he's made only 1 or no field goals have come on the road, and 3 of those 4 were outdoors. So indoors, Matt Gay is money to make 2 or more field goals. All right, so that's going to wrap up our Super Bowl 56 Propapalooza Sunday 6-pack. Sean is going with Cooper Kupp, longest reception over 27.5 yards. Kevin Huber, longest punt over 52.5 yards. And Rams first timeout at minus 115. I'm going winner of the coin toss to defer at minus 500. Samaje Perine under 15.5 combined rushing and receiving yards, and Matt Gay over 1.5 field goals. All right, Sean, now we can really get into it. We're going to go all over the place here and try to touch on just all of the props in what is usually called our best of the rest segment, but there's no real rest because every prop is equal as long as you can profit off of it. So let's start out here with the National Anthem. Do you tend to have any type of strategy when you're betting the National Anthem, which is obviously the most important prop of the game?
Yeah, my strategy is listen to you talk about it. This is definitely your specialty. I'll handle the punting props. You're usually good handling the National Anthem, so I'm looking forward to hearing your pick here.
Yeah, so thank you. We got Mickey Guyton singing this thing. Not a ton of information on her specifically, but some really good information on how to approach this based on what's happened in the past. So the over-under I'm seeing out there in the market right now is about 95 seconds, which is about 1:35. The last 15 Super Bowls, it's been about even 8 overs, 6 unders, 1 push. But the average length for the last 15 Super Bowls is 2 minutes and 1 second, or 121 seconds. And the median is right there as well at 1:59 seconds, or 119. So that means that this is about a 2-minute anthem on average at these Super Bowls. And right now the total is only at 1:35. So I think you have to go over here. 7 of the last 9 have been over 2 minutes. So, I mean, this is really just a smash over for me. I wouldn't be surprised if the market kind of bumps it up. Now, again, has Guyton, do we have a lot of information on her specifically? No, but most performers have tended to kind of drag it out of lately. Yeah. Last year we saw it was 2 minutes and 17 seconds for Jasmine Sullivan and Eric Church. Demi Lovato came in at 1:49 a couple years ago. Gladys Knight was at 2 minutes, 1 second. Pink was at 1:52. So those are all over this number. And the 5 before that, all over 2 minutes. Luke Bryan, 2:04. Lady Gaga, 2:22. Idina Menzel, 2:04. Renee Fleming, 2:03. Alicia Keys, 2:36. So this is one where I would actually bet this up to, maybe 115 or so. I think the number is going to go up as we get closer and as people start to talk about this and we start writing articles about it. This is one I would try to lock in as soon as possible, because anything under 2 minutes, you're getting good value according to the past data.
Now, is this the opening number, or has it gone up since it opened? Do you know?
That I don't know. This is my first time looking at it.
Okay. Because I feel like typically the national anthem, I feel like the steam moves are usually the right side. So if it starts like getting bet up, it always seems like that's the side to be on. No, I don't know if you have that kind of data.
No, I don't have, but I will say this. I mean, there's almost usually, like, for something like a prop, there's almost never Steve moves on the under regardless. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like people wouldn't be betting under for a prop like this. And I don't think the sharps would really be quote unquote sharps, you know what I mean? Would really be touching it. So bottom line is it should be around 2 minutes. Like, that's the best. We can feel pretty confident it should be around 2 minutes. If you can get anything under that, go for it. Only once you start getting over 2 minutes, should you start thinking about an under if you're going to bet this.
But you think there's like a 20 seconds edge here?
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty big. I'll have to join you on this one as well.
All right. Let's go to something that actually does involve the game here. That's the MVP. And this is always a fun one. As you're listening to this, we'll probably have an article up where we do our Super Bowl odds draft every year at Action. And these things are actually, valuable exercise. I remember a couple of years ago, I took Edelman in one of our drafts, and I ended up betting him, and he won it. So these things are kind of a great thought exercise to kind of think about now. So let's talk through this a little bit. I'll set you up with some numbers. You can kind of give me your thoughts on what you're thinking, but just for some numbers, historically, quarterbacks have won 55% of the times. Running backs and receivers have won 12.5% of the time each. Defensive players have won 18% of the time. And then Desmond Howard, he was a wide receiver, but more like a kick returner. He won one as well. But wide receivers have won 24% of the time over the last 17 Super Bowls. So they've won 4 of the last 17. So that's kind of the historical data. With that being said, we have Matthew Stafford, the favorite, at -115, and then Joe Burrow comes in next at +225. What stands out to you on the board for Super Bowl MVP, Sean?
Yeah, so I think when looking at these numbers, you kind of want to look at recent seasons. You quoted the last 17 years, the receivers have won it a bit more. I think that makes sense because the NFL is becoming more pass heavy in general. So I don't think we've seen a running back win it in the past 20 years or so. So I won't be attacking any running backs. I think quarterbacks, obviously the quarterback is, the most likely one to win, but the QBs have won 7 of the past 10 Super Bowls. So if you take a look at Joe Burrow, he's +225. I thought about taking him because I think that's a sneaky way to sort of bet on the Bengals money line. Instead of getting him at +160, you can get him +225. But I just don't think there's enough value there because, like I said, the QB is only going to win it around 70% of the time. So I think that the way to kind of attack this is to look at the wide receivers. And we have some legit wide receivers in the Super Bowl this year. So the guy that I think stands out the most to me is probably T. Higgins at 50-1. On the Fantasy Flex all season long, I've been the biggest T. Higgins stan. So, I can't help myself here. But, if the Rams were to double team or sell out to try to stop Jamar Chase, T. Higgins could benefit from that. And he has, the potential to have a big enough game to be a Super Bowl MVP. So I think at 50-1 odds, I think T. Higgins is probably, the best value when it comes to guys outside of the QB position, in my opinion. How about you?
Yeah, I love the T. Higgins call because the Rams play zone at a top 3 rate.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this all year on the flex, but T. Higgins is kind of the Bengals' go-to receiver when they face zone coverage. Like, Jamar Chase kills against man coverage. He's one of the best in the league. at beating man coverage, but against zone, they're a lot closer. Like Chase is at 2.4 yards per route run, and T. Higgins is at 2.1. So there's only a 0.3 separation. Whereas when you look at man coverage, Ja'Marr Chase, 3.6 yards per route run, T. Higgins, 2.1. So Higgins is kind of that steady guy who just happens to be more productive against zone because Chase's numbers will go down in that situation. You can bracket him a little more and things like that. Chase is just a guy, he's going to kill one-on-one coverage. So I really do like that Higgins call. I think Chase and Kupp still kind of stand out as well. If you're going away from quarterback, you're getting Chase at 16-1, which I still think is decent odds for a guy that we know can go for 200 plus yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game. And then Cooper Kupp at 6-1 is just kind of a way, Matthew Stafford is the obvious choice and he's the favorite. So there's a lot of correlation, obviously, between Stafford and Kupp. And there's a situation kind of like with Brady and Edelman where, maybe the Bengals say, hey, Cooper Kupp is going to beat us. We're going to make sure we cover everyone else and let Kupp get his 150 yards. So if Kupp goes 10 for 150 with a touchdown or 2, and Stafford only finishes with 250 yards, but the Rams win the game, you're looking at Cooper Kupp for MVP. So I think it's Kupp, Chase, and love the Higgins call as well for me.
Is there anybody above 100-1 odds that you'd consider?
Let's see. I would say above 100. Can it be at 101?
It could be. Yeah. Like you have Jalen Ramsey.
Yes, that was a guy. That's why he's 100-1. Oh,
okay.
It's Jalen Ramsey because he wants this, right? What I mean? This is his kind of stage. He wants to be seen on the stage. He may guard Chase one-on-one. I mean, who knows? Maybe they switch it up. It's a Super Bowl. Maybe they break tendency. He's going to want an interception. He's going to want to try to show out. He's going to want to blitz and get a sack and get a big play. So I think Ramsey will be all over the field. I think he's the obvious guy that stands out, especially when you're getting him at 100-1, whereas Von Miller, who by the way has won, he's 50-1. So, defensive players, I think it's kind of a toss up, whoever the ball's hands kind of lands in, if you get a fumble 6 or a pick 6. But you also have Aaron Donald and he's 12-1, right? So you're not really getting value on these other stars. Whereas Ramsey, because of what they're doing with him and putting him in that star position, he's actually being able to be around the ball a lot more. So I think that's a ridiculous value for Ramsey. Still a low probability outcome, but I mean, of everyone on at 100-1 or better, I think Ramsey sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And, he would probably deserve it if Ja'Marr Chase finishes with 0 catches for 0 yards or something. But that also means they're not throwing to Ramsey. So it's kind of hard for him to make splash plays in the box score to kind of warrant an MVP vote. So I agree with you there, but it's definitely tough. These 100-1, these guys are 100-1 for a reason. But I think a guy like Trey Hendrickson might be sneaky on the Bengals side. By the way, I'm attacking these Bengal players because I'm going to be on them plus 5.5 and money or plus 4.5 and money line. So I'm trying.
I was about to say, where are you getting that line? Let's stop the podcast. Let's all go bet Bengals plus 5.5.
Yeah, maybe I'm seeing in the future that I'm waiting for it to get up to 5.5. But I think he's more likely to get a strip sack, things like that to kind of make splash plays in the box score. So I think Hendrickson, out of these guys that are just 100-1 or better, he's probably my pick.
I'll give you one more name since, and I think a lot of people, obviously the market thinks the Rams are going to win. So some of these Rams guys do stick out here. One other one that I'll mention is Leonard Floyd, because all eyes are going to be on Donald. How do we block Donald? How do we block Von Miller? Leonard Floyd is that guy that's going to get, he'll probably get singled up. They could put him on on Prince on the right tackle. That's been an issue. You can kind of isolate him where you want. So, and now we don't even know about CJ Usoma, which would have been a valuable chip blocker on the outside. So, I mean, Leonard Floyd, maybe there's a fumble or a sack or something. He picks it up. Maybe he causes it, strip sack. That could be just massive for him. And we've seen some random defensive players win it in the past. Not that Floyd is random, but he's not like a Donald or a Ramsey. So I think he's worth mentioning. And what do you think about this? Since you like the Bengals, no kicker has ever won. But if the Bengals have a chance, I feel like they're going to have to slow down that Rams offense too. The Rams defense is obviously very good, and the Bengals are going to have issues blocking, all these guys in the Rams front. So, I mean, we could get one of those low scoring Super Bowls. If the Bengals win like 18-10 or 15-10, right? And McPherson, which they've won a game by 15-10 score this year, but McPherson makes like 5 field goals and like two or three 50-yarders. Like, he has to get the MVP, right?
Absolutely. It's going to be uncommon, but that's why he's 100-1, right? But if there were ever a kicker, I think that could do it. It's probably him. He'll probably have to kick the game winner to win it. And yeah, it would have to be a low scoring game where he gets about 4 field goals, including the game winner. Maybe, 2 of those kicks have to be over 50 yards, but it's certainly possible. He's been one of the better stories of the Bengals season. So if there were ever a time to bet the kicker, I think it was Friedman bet Zerline that one year, and it looked like he was going to do it. But I think this would be the one time I could get behind backing a kicker at 100-1 with McPherson.
All right. So, that was our MVP talk. Just to recap, we like Burrow's value a little more than Stafford here, but really like the receivers' values. They've won 4 out of the last 17. So T. Higgins at 50-1, Jamar Chase at 16-1, Cooper Kupp at 6-1, and then some long shots, Trey Hendrickson, Jalen Ramsey, Evan McPherson, Leonard Floyd, all 100-1. All right, let's go to another fun one. First touchdown. And I like to look at this in terms of the teams, like first touchdown for the Rams, first touchdown for the Bengals. I think that's a little easier to cap. But how do you kind of approach the first touchdown markets? I know you usually have a lot of great simulations and things like that are able to kind of give us some true odds here.
Yeah, so I have projections for these, and I project touchdowns for every player, and it's factoring in. I'm using the Rams are favored by 4.5, so I'm not favoring the Bengals here. And with all that said, I am showing Jamar Chase offering quite a bit of value at 9-1. So I'm projecting him closer to 7-1 here. Again, factoring everything where I think the Rams are probably more likely to score first. But Chase, especially out of the gate, he has such big play potential when it comes to first touchdown score. That's kind of what I like. So I think out of both sides, I think the best value right now is probably Jamar Chase at 9-1.
So I'll give everyone out there the breakdowns of what actually has happened this year. I know that's, it's not necessarily going to line up with the models, which are a lot more sophisticated, but still interesting. For the Rams, Cooper Kupp has done it in 4 out of the 20 games, or he's done it 20% of the times. And also Van Jefferson has done it 20% of the time. Those are the 2 leaders for the Rams. Higbee and Michelle have done it 3 times each, or 15% of the time. And then for the Bengals, Joe Mixon has done it 25% of the time. Really, actually 5 out of 19 games, because he didn't play in that week 18 game. So he's above 25% is Joe Mixon here. And then CJ Usoma, Jamar Chase have each done it 3 times. So it's about 15% for each of those guys. So those are the leaders for the Bengals. So I do think there are some interesting ways to exploit this market in terms of the first touchdown for each team. For the Rams, Van Jefferson is 10-1 to score the Rams' first touchdown. That's a 9% chance. And I know Jefferson has been kind of quiet lately, but he's still out there running a route on over 90% of Stafford's dropbacks. So the odds are, if it's a passing play, Jefferson's going to be in there. And he pretty much plays every snap. So unless they go really heavy or it's a running play, I think you got really good odds on Jefferson right here. 10-1 is a 9% implied probability, and he's done it 20% of the time this year. So not saying he has a true 20% chance, but I think it's a little bit higher, or substantially higher than 9% or 10-1 odds here. I also think Cam Akers is interesting. He's 5-1 to score the first touchdown for the Rams at 17%. A starting running back for the Rams has scored in a quarter of their games the first touchdown. So that's about 25%, whereas the implied odds for Akers are about 17%. So I think you're getting a pretty good edge there. And that's a pretty, we know Akers, we know Michelle will probably mix in, but Akers is the starting running back. That's been abundantly clear. I think he'll get the first crack at the goal line carries down there. So I really like that one. And then Tyler Higbee, if he plays, 15% of the time he scored the Rams' first touchdown. The odds imply only about a 10% chance at 9-1. Maybe because he's injured, but if he's playing, he's going to be out. He's another guy. He's going to be out there every snap. So I think he's another good bet. And then for the Bengals, mentioned Mixon. He's done it over 25% of the time. His odds to score the Bengals' first touchdown are 3.5-1. So the implied odds are only about 20%, whereas his true odds are probably closer to 25%. And then two long shots. The backup running backs for the Bengals. I mentioned I don't like Perine for his median, but I do like him for a long shot because he's actually scored the Bengals' first touchdown twice this year. And that's not even including the game where, no one played, because I don't think he played in that game either, the last game of the season.
No, it was very tilting for DFS too.
Right, yeah, because we thought he was going to play. That's it. Nice little zero in our lineups. But I digress. But so he's done it 10% of the time. His odds are 28-1. That's just a 3.4% implied odds. So you're getting about 3x on what his true odds have been this year. That doesn't mean his true odds going forward are 10%, but the point is he's kind of one of those guys that they just draw things up for every once in a while. I don't know if they'll do it as much here. That's why I like his under, but at 28-1, I mean, it's not bad. And, there's also the possibility that maybe Mixon gets like banged up on like a long carry and then Perine runs it in from like a yard out. So there's a lot of possibilities there for Perine. And then Chris Evans, kind of the same thing. His odds are 33-1, 2.9% implied odds. He's actually done it twice this year. Now, one of them was in the Week 18 game, but he's also the kick returner. So he's going to get some chances here to do this. If the Bengals win the toss, he could get a chance early in the game. About a 40% chance that, it's not a touchback for Matt Gay. So I like Chris Evans as well at 33-1. And again, with these backup running backs, you never know. Like Mixon could break a long run. Maybe he has to come out. Maybe he gets banged up. He always seems to be a little banged up. And somebody else has to come in and get like a 1 or 2 yard touchdown. So I think if there's ever a time to bet backup running backs who are projecting for like a half a touch for some long shot, right, it's now. So because we usually just don't even get odds posted a lot of times for some of these. So especially for first team touchdown, we might get first touchdown scorer, but then that's just even harder. But for first team touchdown, I think both of these teams should score a touchdown. And if not, our McPherson bet cashes. So,
exactly.
Those are the kind of ones I'm looking at. But I really think that Van Jefferson one stands out just because he's on the field every play. And his true odds this season have been, more than double what the implied odds are.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just looking at your breakdown, which you did a fantastic job of, by the way, just Uzomah tied for second with Chase with 3 first touchdown scores in 20 games. Like Uzomah seems like a serious 50-50 shot to play this game. So if he were to be ruled out and it's Drew Sample, that's a massive drop off in terms of, touchdown expectations. So, guys like Chase, Mixon, Higgins, their odds will only go up. So I think the time to kind of attack this market for either team, because you already mentioned Higbee is a 50-50 bet as well. The time to take advantage of that is probably now if you can find value, because they might only go up if one of these tight ends is ruled out.
Yes, sir. All right. So that's for first touchdown for the first touchdown for the game. Sean loves the 9-1 odds for Chase. I'm guessing those are going to get shorter as we approach game time. And then for first Rams touchdown, I really like Van Jefferson at 10-1, like Cam Akers at 5-1 as well. And then on the Bengals side, love Joe Mixon at 3.5-1, and Perine and Evans long shots at 28 and 33-1 respectively. Let's move on to an interesting prop. The first play of the game, runner pass. Any thoughts on, I have some thoughts on this, but I'm just curious to your thoughts. Do you ever bet this one, or do you have any thoughts on just, based on these two teams, how to attack this one?
No, this is usually one I stay away from. I include this with the first timeout type of props that I never bet, but I'm assuming with this matchup, it would be a pass, especially with, how pass heavy the Bengals have been. of late, but last week it seemed like they ran it a ton on first down. So I'd probably stay away. This seems a little too random for me, but if you have any info that can convince me otherwise, go for it.
I think you have to bang pass here because at
Okay.
BetMGM, run is minus 130, pass is even money at plus 100.
Wow.
I went back and looked at every first play of the game for each team.
There you go.
The Rams have passed only 40% of the time, 8 out of 20. Okay. The Bengals have passed 16 of 20 times. That's 80%. So you average that out, and that's about 60%, which mean the true odds are closer to minus 150. But either way, at worst, I'd say at worst, it's a 50-50 bet. And you're getting plus 100 anyway for pass. And I think that's the floor. So anytime you can get even money for the floor, I think you got to take it here. Because if you want to say, hey, none of us know, you could go either way, fine. But then in reality, it should be minus 115 each way, given the VIG. But you're still getting that essentially free VIG on the pass here at plus 100. So I think you got to bang pass here. But even just based on these teams' tendencies, just like looking at all these teams, they've deferred, and more often than not, the Bengals are going to pass. So the Rams have been getting a little more, pass. They went through this stage in the middle of the year when they ran a lot, but they've been passing a little more, especially against good run defenses. And the Bengals' run defense is better than their pass defense. So I do think that the Rams, if they get the ball first, are a good bet to come out and throwing the ball. And then the Bengals have been at 80%, nice. 80% odds to throw the ball. So yeah, I think you got to bang pass here.
It's a Super Bowl too. These coaches have 2 weeks to dream up their first play. Do you think they're just going to bang it up the middle with Mixon or Akers for a 2-yard carry? Hell no. Just take a deep shot, or, just complete a 4-yard pass just to settle the nerves of the quarterback and play. Like it does make sense to just, take pass at even money. You've convinced me on this one.
All right. So yeah, we love pass at even money. I would even bet it a little past even money. I would bet it to about maybe 130 or so, because I think the true odds are closer to 60%, just based on the histories. Let's talk about some scoring early on in the game. We'll talk first quarter and first half in a minute, but first 6 minutes, that's an interesting one that sometimes people want to get down on. Any thoughts on this one?
No, not really, because I'll probably end up being on the under. I think it's going to get bet up potentially at a 49.5, maybe 50 again. So I'm looking to bet on the under. So if anything, I would fade a score in the first 6 minutes. Yeah. So I think, because you had anticipate that most action will be on a score happening in the first 6 minutes. People don't want to root for nothing to happen. So I would probably wait for this. The odds for the no on this market will probably only get better. So if anything, without looking at the data, I'm sure you gathered, I'll probably be on the no on this, just sort of fading the market.
Yeah. So the odds I've seen out there about minus 140 for the no. I think the true odds should be closer to about minus 170, which is about a 64% chance of it, of no score, because you look at this season, Cincinnati scored in the first 6 minutes in 20% of their games, and so did the Rams. And then Cincinnati allowed a score in the first 6 minutes in 25% of the games. The Rams allowed it in 15%. So about a 20% chance for each team. You kind of do some math, and it comes out to about a 64% chance of not having a score by either team in that first 6 minutes. And that would be about minus 170. And again, the odds that I've seen out there are about minus 140. So you're getting some pretty good value there. But I think that's going to go right into the next thing I want to talk about, which is early in the game. I mean, we kind of talked about, we do expect a pass a little bit more likely than a run early in the game. But one of the things I will say is that first quarters in the Super Bowl, they do tend to be low scoring. They do tend to be a situation where teams are kind of feeling themselves out. Only 8 of 22 first quarters since 1999 in the Super Bowl have hit double digits. That's just 36.3%. Right now, the over-under at BetMGM is 9.5. So I think you'd have to go pretty juiced to the under before you stop betting on under 9.5 here. But what are your thoughts on just how these teams are going to kind of come out? Is it going to change based on, whether the Rams win and defer or the Bengals win and defer the coin toss? Because that, again, is going to happen.
No, I don't think that would matter, but I do anticipate, the first quarter, it's going to be a bit of a chess match. These coaches will probably be playing for field position, just trying to settle in. So yeah, I'm probably going to lean on the under here. And this is usually when I think Kevin Huber is going to launch a punt over 52.5 yards. So I think
correlation
early on, I think it will be sort of a field position battle. I think the second half would be when we start seeing fireworks once these coaches sort of relax a bit. But yeah, typically the first quarter is the lowest scoring quarter.
So you like the first quarter under?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I got some numbers for you. You're going to love this.
Okay, bring it.
On the first quarter total this year, the Bengals are 6-13-1. The Rams are even worse at 6-14 toward the over, that is. So combined, they're 12-27 with one push toward the over, or looked at another way, they're 27-12-1 toward the under, a cool 69%.
Wow.
So yeah, that's nice. that's exactly. That's another one of those bets. I'm going to lock in here. Obviously you could see a big play or something could ruin it, but you still need that touchdown and then another field goal.
Yeah.
Both of these teams, I think will, the quarterbacks, you could generally trust them. They might get sacked, so that could also help. Burrow led the league in sacks, which could really help it. So yeah, I think this is a nice little edge here on the first quarter. The spreads both teams have been kind of a little better than average toward the spread in the first quarter, but I don't see any edge there. Second quarter though. So if we hit the first quarter under this, and this kind of goes into live betting, which, again, we can talk about in more detail, at other times, but second quarter totals, Rams 10-9-1, but the Bengals 14-6. So the Bengals 6-13-1 in the first quarter total, 14-6 in the second quarter. The Bengals have really they're an adjustments team, right? Like we saw that last week against the Chiefs. The Bengals are an adjustment team. So sometimes it takes till the second half. That's been the narrative, but can be the second quarter as well. And the second quarter is just a high scoring quarter. So I think if you are looking to bet an over, which I know most people are, second quarter probably makes more sense, just given the history, given the two teams, given what we've seen in the Super Bowl. So the over under for the second quarter is 14, which is pretty doable because how would you assess the chances of like at least one of these teams scoring in the 2 minute? It's very high, right?
Yeah, we could see, both teams score in the 2 minutes. If the first team gets the ball in the 2 minute offense and they just march down the field and score immediately, both teams have really good kickers. So we could see another team march down the field and get a field goal. So I do like the idea of, locking in the first quarter under 9.5 before the game starts, and then maybe just wait till in game to sort of bet the over on the first half once we do get closer to the second quarter. I think that makes sense, especially just based on these two teams and, how good both offenses are, but they could start off slow. So yeah, I think that's a good in-play betting strategy.
All right, let's go to the third quarter. Third quarter, Bengals have been kind of average toward the total. Rams have actually been 13-6-1 in the third quarter, so toward the over. Take that what you will. I don't see anything major that's kind of causing that, but I did see something interesting with the third quarter spread. And that's because, as we mentioned, we talked about Cincinnati. They're a team that makes great adjustments. Yes. So it wasn't an aberration. Like that first, second half turnaround this season, the Cincinnati Bengals are 16-4 against the spread in the third quarter. The Rams 8-12. So you combine that, and that's a 70% on average, hit rate in Cincinnati's favor. Like that's extremely high here. So, any thoughts here on I know you're probably going to be on the Bengals full game. Is this something that, you'd kind of want to lock in, before the game as well? Or is it an opportunity to live bet, or how would you kind of use that information?
Yeah, that is interesting. That might be a live bet strategy. Plus it's also, I'm taking probably the Bengals 4.5, hopefully 5 if it gets there. Knowing that if the Bengals do get behind, they're a team that makes adjustments, and can come back from any deficit. So I'm sort of baking that in the cake. But yeah, if you just want to go into the game assuming they'll get behind and then back them in game, you could be getting them, plus 10.5, let's say. So that might be actually the smarter strategy. But I think going into this, I'm just going to lock them in at 4.5, root for them out of the gate. But yeah, if they do get behind, I am confident they'll come back because of a lot of things that you said, when they make halftime adjustments and just Joe Burrow's ability to come back. So I think it's kind of just whatever, pick your poison, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. But I'm going to be locking them in before the game, plus 4.5.
All right, let's get into some player props. Mentioned a couple at the top that we like, but let's kind of look at these markets a little more closely. Sean, which other props? I know you like the Cooper Kupp. I know you like Chase's first touchdown. I know you like Kevin Huber. What other player props kind of stand out to you in the market?
So I have a couple Bengals player props I've been eyeing. I haven't locked them in yet because their price keeps dropping. So I'm sort of waiting for it to hit rock bottom. And I'll probably go on the over. But the first one is Joe Burrow over 271.5 passing yards. Now, granted, this is a tough matchup against the Rams. There's no denying that. But Burrow certainly has the talent and the weapons to overcome it. The Bengals have become increasingly pass heavy since week 14. They've had the 4th highest early down pass rate in neutral situations. So, I think just the volume's going to be there. And they've been getting, Joe Mixon involved in the passing game. That's sort of been an extension of the running game. So just all signs point to Joe Burrow having a good game through the air. I'm projecting this closer to 285. So the fact that it's 271, we have quite a bit of value. And it like I said, it keeps dropping. So I'm sort of going to time it once it hits rock bottom to go in on the over here. And then I'm probably going to pair that up with T. Higgins over 67.5 receiving yards. You already talked about at the top of the show how T. Higgins has generally done really well against zone defenses this year. So against the Rams that play zone at a very high rate, I think Higgins is going to have a big game, especially if they put extra resources in on, slowing down Jamar Chase. Tyler Boyd has sort of been invisible in this offense of late. So, T. Higgins is set up for a big game here. And if CJ Uzoma is ruled out, I think that's going to help Higgins even more. So I love getting Higgins over 67.5. I'm projecting him closer to 76 for his median. So again, I think there's quite a bit of value here, but I'm going to wait for it to kind of drop to the low point and then come in on the over.
Speaking of Uzoma, I think this is a good segue as we're talking about player props to kind of ask you, what impact does Uzoma and Tyler Higbee, both of their impacts being out versus in, like, is it any tangible differential in, the yardage for Burrow and Stafford? Is it any differential in the yardage for guys like Chase, Kupp, Beckham? Is it the second receivers that benefit? Is it guys like Van Jefferson and Tyler Boyd that benefit? Like, what do you think happens? And is there a way to take advantage of the market, based on that we don't know right now, whether these guys are kind of out or in?
Yeah, it's certainly a tricky situation. Unfortunately, it means that we don't have any CJ Uzoma or Drew Sample props. So that's step one, is they can't even offer these props yet. But next week, I will have my player prop calculator where I'm going to have these percentages for every player. And I think I'm going to add in, is CJ Uzoma in or out? Like, I will have it that granular, and you'll be able to see, like, Tyler Boyd, for example, his projection will probably go up if CJ Uzoma is ruled out. Again, T. Higgins, his projection will probably go up. So I'm going to be factoring that all in. I think a guy like Jamar Chase probably doesn't matter much. He's probably already maxed out. So Uzoma being in or out probably doesn't impact him as much. But these sort of ancillary receivers, you could see their projection go up because, if a guy like Drew Sample is starting, he sees a way lower target share than CJ Uzoma. So those have to go somewhere. So I think you'll see, guys like Mixon, Higgins, or Boyd sort of pick those up. And I'll be factoring all that in my player prop tool that will be released next week.
At actionnetwork.com.
At actionnetwork.com.
That's an interesting one. Mixon, I think, I know Boyd is kind of thought of as that middle of the field receiver, and I think it's about time he has a good game. So, I mean, he's due, right? Like,
he's definitely due.
Another guy, he's just like Van Jefferson, right? It's like these guys are out there 90% of the time plus. It's only a matter of time, and it could happen on one catch if things go right. So, don't hate his number at 41.5, though. I don't think there's really a massive edge based on whether Uzomah plays or not. But I think Mixon is interesting at 25.5. The Bengals are underdogs. If there's a lot of zone coverage, he could see, I think, a lot of dump offs. And as I mentioned, I think he's going to see the field more than at any point because it's the Super Bowl. I mean, there's no reason to play Samaje Perine in this kind of game. So that could be one, but yeah, we'll kind of have the updated projections, and you'll have your props calculator. That's just something, unfortunately, we can't attack as much as we want to, and that kind of carries over to just a bunch of the receiving numbers. Really, like if I was sure that they were in or out, I think I would be a little more confident with a recommendation on like Boyd, on Jefferson, who's been kind of trending down, but his numbers also low now because of it. But until those guys are ruled in and out, I don't think we can really, there's really not a confident recommendation we could give either way because it will change. Okay. So you like Burrow, you like Higgins. I'll talk about a couple that stood out to me. The first one was Joe Mixon, and I'll stay with the Bengals for a second here. Joe Mixon over 16.5 rush attempts at -120. He's been over this in 12 out of 19 games this season, or 63%. So that would put the true odds closer to -170. But he's also been over in 2 of 3 this postseason. And it is interesting because you did mention, the Burrow yardage prop is going down. I don't necessarily think that's like, oh, the Bengals are going to struggle. I think that's because we've seen the spread, it got bet up to 4.5 at one point. It's gone down back to 4 at some books. So I think the more even a game script is, the better chance you have for Mixon to get a decent number of rush attempts. So, he's been a guy that all year long they've leaned on him. And I think there's a chance he plays more snaps in this game than he's played pretty much, I don't want to say all season, but pretty much all postseason, when he still does take a breather here and there, maybe every 8th or 9th snap he'll come out. So I like the over 16.5 rushes for Mixon. I have him projected closer to 18.5.
Wow. Yeah, I have him at 17.5. And again, I don't think I mentioned this at the top, but I'm going to have a massive card, maybe like over 10 props total. And I like to make sure they all correlate. I ended up going 9-0 last year because I was so meticulous on making sure that if I'm adding a prop that it fits sort of the narrative of, all my other props. So I think this one pairs well if you're going to be betting on the Bengals, whether it's money line or spread, taking Mixon to go over 16.5 rush attempts correlates really well with that. So I think I'm going to throw this in there. Just because, like we said, I don't think Samaje Perine or Chris Evans will see a rush attempt here. So Mixon's going to get it all. There's no reason to not give him every rush attempt. It's the Super Bowl. So I think it's going to be a much more favorable game script than the market's implying. So yeah, I'm with you here. Closer to like 18 rush attempts.
And then one other one that really stood out here was Matthew Stafford. His rushing prop is at 5.5. And I think this is a really interesting one because it's like, do you have the cojones essentially to bet the under, which I think is the right play, even though he's gone over in every postseason game. But on the season, he's been under in 13 out of 20 or 65%. That would mean his true odds at 5.5, the under should be closer to -185 instead of -115. But even more interestingly, you want to look at the median, which is really what we're trying to kind of isolate here and figure out which way to bet. Matthew Stafford's median rushing yards this year is half a yard. And so, yep. I mean, yes, when he goes over, it's usually probably like one scramble that's going to take him over. He doesn't scramble very often. Maybe he'll get like a couple of quarterback sneaks or something like that. But I think there's a massive kind of edge here. It didn't quite make it into my top 3, but it's right there because I still think there's a pretty big edge in under 5.5. I mean, you could have quarterback sneaks, you could have a scramble, you could have, and then that's not to say, again, the Rams are still favored, even though we both kind of lean Bengals at the spread. The Rams are still favored. You could get 3 kneel downs. You might even get a kneel down at the half. Like, there's a lot of ways for him to go under this number, as he's done in 2/3 of his games this season.
Yeah. So when it comes to Matthew Stafford, even if he ends up getting 7 rushing yards, let's say, if the Rams win, he'll probably get a couple kneel downs at the end and he can still go under. So I do like sort of the outs that you have at your disposal if Stafford even clears this.
Right.
So yeah, no, I love this. Like you said, his median on the season is a half yard.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, just overweight the past few games. He's scrambled and, he looked like shit while doing it. But I think this is giving us a golden opportunity here to hammer this under.
To drive this point home, the Bengals have allowed the 10th fewest rushing yards to quarterbacks during the regular season. Of those yards, there were 237 of them. Over 50% came from Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields. 2 quarterbacks responsible for over 50% of the rushing yardage allowed during the regular season for the Cincinnati Bengals. And they play a lot of zone and they drop 8 back into coverage sometimes, as we saw last week. So that's why Patrick Mahomes was running backwards for most of that second half. And he went well under his rushing yardage prop last week as well. So yeah, I like the under here. It's just one of those things where if you look at the game logs, you're gonna be like, oh man, he went over 3 straight. It's like, that's not how it works. We need to look at the larger sample. We need to look at the matchup. We need to look at the game script. So yeah, this is one I love.
Love it. But one of my favorite Super Bowl good beats of all time was that Patrick Mahomes under 29.5 rushing yards. And he had 41 or something heading into the final drive. And he didn't just kneel down. He ran backwards for 8 to 10 yards twice, I think, to lose about 15 yards, just barely going under the rushing total. So these are always exciting to bet on in general when it comes to the Super Bowl. But yeah, this Stafford one probably won't be exciting because he might not even scramble. But either way, ton of value here.
Stafford could end this game with 0 carries for 0 yards.
Right.
It's a very real outcome here. So yeah, I love it. All right. A couple more I want to talk about just because they're interesting. They're exciting. People probably are going to want to bet on them. I'll start with Cooper Kupp. Right now at BetMGM, his receiving yardage over under is 105.5. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm right in line with that. Like I said, so I'm projecting him at 8 receptions with a median closer to 102.5. So I'm slightly under, and I figured that would be the case. They're probably just taking a ton of action on the over, but I already gave you an out here. Cooper Kupp over 28.5 yards for his longest reception. I think that's the market to bet on for Cooper Kupp. I think his yardage is insane for a reason. He's been, right around here all season long, but I'm going to stay away from this. But again, I think the value is on his longest reception going over.
Yeah, and I'm truly in line with this. I actually have his median at 105.5. So nice. I think this is a great line. Let's talk Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, 78.5. You kind of mentioned, T. Higgins has been the guy a little more against zone. This is probably one of those games where you want to sell out to stop Chase. BetMGM has Chase at 78.5 for his receiving yardage over under. What do you think of that one?
I think that's a bit high. I'm projecting this closer to 72.5. But again, I'm not going to directly bet the under on Jamar Chase because I'm going to want the Bengals to win. I have them +4, potentially money line. So I don't want to be rooting against Jamar Chase. So I think the way to do this is what I described is, I'm going to bet Joe Burrow over on his passing yards. So I will be rooting for Jamar Chase in that regard. And then I think T. Higgins, betting the over on him is sort of a way to hedge a bit and, bet against Jamar Chase. So, so to speak. So I think that I'm going to weasel my way around fading Jamar Chase, but I'm not going to bet it directly. How about you?
Yeah, I'm under a little higher than you, but I'm at 76.5 for a median. So a couple yards under. Whereas I'm about 4 yards over on Higgins. I have him about 71.5 for the median. Actually, let's talk about Tyler Boyd really quick and Jefferson, because I do. So right now I kind of have the snap split in my model between Uzoma and Sample and Higbee and Blanton. But I am over both Tyler Boyd and Van Jefferson's current numbers. I have Boyd about 45.5. The market's at 41.5. And then I have Jefferson about 35.5. The market's 31.5. So are you more in line with the market, or are you kind of, where are you on those two guys?
Yeah, so I'm in line with the market on Boyd, and full disclosure, I had Boyd over, what was it, like 39.5 receiving yards last week. He had, like, with the first drive, he had 3 catches for 19 yards. I'm like, all right, got it in the bag. And that's pretty much what he ended on. He had an ADOT close to like 1.9 last week. If anything, I would maybe attack the over on his receptions and attack the under on the receiving yards. Just that's how his usage has been, especially of late. But I'm in line with the market on him. I think Van Jefferson, he's a guy I probably wouldn't touch the receiving yards, because I think you mentioned it. He can score at any point on the field. His ADOT has been through the roof of late. Last week it was 24.4. A couple weeks before that was 31. So he's clearly the deep threat. I think if there were a market to attack, it'd be under 2.5 receptions. I haven't seen it posted anywhere, but I'm assuming the market will be about like 2.5 receptions. I think I'll go on the under on that. But again, I'm sort of waiting for the Tyler Higbee news. I think if Higbee's playing, I'll be a little bit more comfortable attacking Van Jefferson's under. Although Kendall Blanton last week did look pretty good. He saw a target on 50% of his routes, I think it was. So it's one of those things where I'm going to wait and see, but I think I'll probably attack Van Jefferson's under 2.5 receptions. What about you?
Yeah, it's minus 130. I wouldn't touch the receptions. I think I would lean over on the yardage. I just think these last few games, given the underlying usage, it's like, it's just kind of a variance, right? It's like, yes, obviously the games are getting more important. Maybe he's getting targeted a little less, but my numbers are still coming out, well above that, and he could still get it on one catch. So,
yep, exactly.
And this is the type of, you have 2 weeks to scheme, right? It's like, you're going to try to shut down the top guys anyway. So, I mean, there could be an opportunity for him. So that's the way I lean. I don't know. Again, like there is a lot of variance either way, and I don't like taking overs. So, obviously check out the Action Network app at Chris Raybon, and you're at the _odds maker. You can see what we end up doing here, but I would lean over. And another guy, stick with the receivers, because this one caught my eye too. So Odell Beckham's been amazing for the Rams. Great pickup. His number for receiving yardage at BetMGM, 64.5. I'm looking at our projection sheet for Action Network, and both of us are under that. Is that something you'd be willing to go under? I think it's a little high, but at the same time, it feels kind of dangerous, because I know he's been waiting forever for this too. It's like kind of like Ramsey. It's like, this is his moment to shine. So, I mean, where are you on the Beckham? Because I think that's going to be another popular one that people are looking to bet, one way or another.
Yeah. So last week I had the over. I think it was 55.5 yards, cashed easily. I am on the under here. I think it's one of those props where it's probably going to only go up. So I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
But I like the under yards, but I might attack the under receptions. Right now it's 5.5 on BetMGM. The under's minus 145. There might be more value in that market, because I could see him, catching a deep ball or two in this game, but I think it's gonna be tough for him to clear 6 receptions. So I think I'm eyeing the receptions prop specifically. Again, this is Cooper Kupp's offense. He's such a target hog. It could be even more extreme in the Super Bowl. So I think that, yeah, it's a good time to kind of like sell high on Beckham, just because his market's pretty inflated here. So I think I will be on the under on Beckham here.
Yeah, I have him at 4.7 receptions. That's a good call. So like, even if you bump, you'd say really the median is probably closer to 4.5.
Yep.
5 at most, and we're still winning that bet. So yeah, that's a good call.
And just a half a reception in this range it's massive. So even though it's minus 145, it's probably worth maybe like minus 180, given our projections. So yeah, love the value we're getting there.
One more interesting one. So this went up while we were recording. So I have to throw this in here. When I looked at Jamar Chase's rushing prop a few, as we started the show, it was 3.5. It's now up to 4.5 at BetMGM. I know we both do project our rushing numbers, even for wide receivers. Where are you on Jamar Chase rushing yardage?
Whew, yeah. So it's probably gonna be 4 exactly, right? So I have him 1 rush attempt. I'm projecting for 1 rush attempt. I mean, it's a Super Bowl, so maybe they draw up a couple rush attempts. So if anything, I would lean on the over here. But given he's gonna see 1 rush attempt, let's say, he's averaging 4.08 yards an attempt this year. So he's basically a running back, and the median for a running back per attempt is about 3.5. So I now that it's been, you said it was at 3.5, now it's 4.5. I'd probably lean on the under here, just because it like 4 is probably the mode on this. Like it's most likely gonna be 4. So I like the over 3.5 and under 4.5. That's how close my projection is.
Ooh, yeah, it's tough because here's what I noticed. Like, I have it right at 4.5 is like the median. So like I'm kind of torn. I would have gone over at 3.5, but 5 games in the regular season, he had a rush attempt. He's had a rush attempt in every postseason game, including 3 rush attempts in the wild card. However, he had 1 in the divisional and 1 in the conference championship, and both of them went under 4.5. So it was a 2-yard run and a 3-yard run. So it's really tricky. I think it's a good line. I think it's warranted. I think 3.5 was too easy though. Like I think there's a really good chance he gets 1, and probably at this point better than a 50-50 chance he gets 2. So I think it was smart to bump it up over what the average, rushing attempt for him is probably going to be. So yeah, I think it's a good line, but if you can maybe find a 3.5 out there, I think that would be, again, as you always say, the 1 yard is worth a massive amount of value in a market like this when, it's like the difference between 3 and 4. So.
Yeah, a market like this is probably worth like 20%. So that's why I can go from liking the over to the under just by 1 yard. So it's massive. If you can get a 3.5 out there, I would definitely take the over.
And then one more question for you on player props before we jump into some little more exotic props. These kind of versus battles here where it's like one player versus another. Anything stick out to you in those markets?
The one that does stick out is probably the Joe Mixon -130 versus Cam Akers. I mean, both backs have identical projections. If you look at the market, they're right around 62.5, 63 yards. However, we've already talked about it. Samaje, Perine, and Chris Evans might not even get a carry in this game. So Joe Mixon has a very high floor. He's going to get pretty much every single rush attempt out of the backfield. Whereas Cam Akers, he has Sony Michel behind him. Darrell Henderson's back. Maybe they give him a carry, but just Cam Akers has a little bit lower of a floor. So a market like this, where it's head to head, I'm going to lean Joe Mixon all the way. So I do like him -130. However, there's the other market where who will lead the game in rushing yards. You can get a guy like Cam Akers who probably has a higher ceiling at +110. So depending on which guy you like, you would have to, pick and choose the market. So if you do like Akers, attack the market where, you can get him to lead the game in rushing. Because again, the Rams are favored. He's more likely to get, 20+ rush attempts. But I think the head-to-head battle, the higher floor is going to win every time. So give me Joe Mixon at -130 in that matchup.
Yeah, I like that call too. Like go Akers for like a longer shot, but just in terms of betting on their medians, I think Mixon has a clear edge. Because I have him for about like 86% of the backfield carries, where Akers, I have him closer to 68%. So that's like a 20% difference. And, carries, you're just going to kind of say 4 yards a carry, give or take, regardless. So,
these backs maybe 3 yards.
Right. Yeah. I do lean under on the rushing yardage props too. I should say that. Not the most fun thing to bet. I'll stick with my Perine under here, get the rushing plus receiving, but I will say that I am leaning under on both of the on the running backs as well. All right, so we'll close out with some exotic props, but just want to recap. Sean likes Joe Burrow over 271.5 passing yards, T. Higgins over 67.5 rushing yards, and Joe Mixon to have more yardage on the ground than Cam Akers at -130. I like Matthew Stafford under 5.5 rushing yards, and Joe Mixon over 16.5 rushing attempts. We're both pretty much in line with Cooper Kupp's receiving yardage total at 105.5. A little bit under on Jamar Chase at 78.5. A little bit under on Odell Beckham at the 5.5 receptions and the 64.5 yards, and probably leaning over on Boyd and Van Jefferson, but there are a lot of variance there. And Sean does like the under on Jefferson's receptions at 2.5, but more confident once we get the news of exactly who's in and out at tight end for each team. All right. Let's talk penalties. Let's talk defense, special team. Let's talk these kind of exotic props here. Sean, I know you do a lot of work on penalties. You actually told me about a penalty site that I didn't know existed for penalty data. So I was loving that. I appreciate that. But what do you got here in terms of penalty props?
So the website's nflpenalties.com. And the first penalty prop that you should look out for is the first team to be penalized for PI, so pass interference. It's going to be a pick 'em at most books, but you get the Bengals at -115 for that. And the Rams, they only committed 4 pass interference calls all season, which is by far the lowest in the league. So they're very disciplined. I expect that to continue through the Super Bowl. Whereas the Bengals, they're right around league average. They had 9 PI calls this season. The average is 9.5 on the season. So I think in a situation like this, give me the Bengals to be the first team to be penalized for PI -115.
Yeah. And I mean, Rams are also kind of the home team. So there's that whole, element could come into play. So I like that one. Any other ones here for penalties?
Yeah. So the other one is that there won't be a roughing the passer call. Prices are going to vary, but I'm looking for about -130 to lock in here. Both teams were below average in terms of committing a roughing the passer penalty. The Rams only committed roughing the passer call in 5 of 20 games. And the Bengals only committed a roughing the passer call in 3 of 20 games. So those are pretty low compared to league average. Plus the head ref of the Super Bowl, I think they might have a variety for the crew, but the head ref is Ron Torbert, who ranked 13th out of 17 in terms of penalties per game at 10.3. So it all adds up to about 64% chance that there won't be a roughing the passer call. That was sort of the back of the napkin math here. So love if you can get no roughing the passer penalty at -130.
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, I think you worry about the Rams a little more, although I mean, they missed one on Stafford last week, right? So maybe they're looking out for it a bit more. But the Bengals are just not a very penalized team. I believe they were the least penalized. I could be wrong, but they're among the league. They're not very penalized at all. Are the Cincinnati Bengals? So you don't expect them to just kind of tee off in the Super Bowl. So yeah, Sean likes first PI for Cincinnati at -115, and no roughing the passer call in the game at -130. Let's talk about some defense and special teams props. Sean, I know you had your eye on shortest field goal.
Yeah, so I already covered the punter props. Again, we're looking for more markets there. I'll have more bets on those potentially on actionnetwork.com. But the other one that stuck out to me is the shortest field goal made. The line's 27.5 right now. Of course, I had to run a simulator on this. I got a median closer to 33 with a 70% chance that this goes over. And that's factoring the chance that there won't be a field goal in the game. In that case, you'd get your money back. The bet would be voided. So I factored that in as well. But, I have this at close to a 70% chance it's over. 2 really, really good kickers here. But I think once they get closer to the red zone, these offenses are too good. They'll punch it in. So I love the shortest field goal made going over 27.5 yards.
Love it. Is that it for defense special teams?
Yeah, that's it for now. Again, more markets could pop up. Like you'll see combined field goal yardage. I might find some value there, but I have everything built and set up to kind of tackle those as they pop up.
All right. I guess we'll close it out with one last one that I wanted to talk about. Curious to see if you have any opinion on this, but it's another toss-up one, or at least it should be. But first team to use a challenge. So you were in on the timeout, first team to call a timeout with McVay. Any thoughts on first to use a coach's challenge?
I have no thoughts whatsoever. Again, these are markets I rarely tackle, but I thought there was an edge with the timeout. I'm guessing you do have an edge for this one, though.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the numbers, since Zach Taylor came into the league, he has 22 challenges to Sean McVay's 16 in regular season games to give it an even playing field. So that's a pretty big difference, over a 3-year period. So that's why I was laughing, because I'm like, Sean McVay manages to burn all these timeouts, and he's not even a guy that like challenges a ton, right? So I think Cincinnati is a solid bet, minus 115. Kind of a fun one here that you have better than the odds chance of hitting here, just given that, Taylor's been much more likely to challenge than has McVay. So first coach's challenge, Zach Taylor, first time out, Sean McVay. That's how we're doing it.
Love it.
All right. That is going to do it for our Super Bowl 56 Propapalooza episode. Odds courtesy of BetMGM. You can find all of our betting content for the Super Bowl at actionnetwork.com and in the free award-winning Action Network app, which lets you track every bet that you make, as well as follow all the bets that we make, including our props. Sean's at @_oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon, Raybon. And you can find us on Twitter at those same handles. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review on Apple or Spotify. Stuck and I will be back next week at the regular time to break down the Super Bowl and give our final Super Bowl 6-pack. So stay tuned for that. And also be sure to check out the Favorites podcast. Sean and I will be on that to talk more props as well. Till next time, let's get this money.